Okay.
When we are young, we naturally wish to please our parents, our teachers, our ministers and rabbis. Even as adults, we wish to please authority figures, such as our boss at work. However, if obedience to authority causes us to ignore our own ethical standards,
Okay.
big trouble can result. When people in organizations make decisions, they are often much more concerned about the acceptability of the decision to the people to whom they are accountable than they are about the content of the decision itself. Studies show CFOs are more likely to illicitly manage earnings when it profits their CEOs than when it profits themselves. In other words, they act unethically primarily to please their bosses, not to put money in their own pockets.
I worked at CVS Pharmacy, and every week we would have different sales. And a lot of times regular customers, they would find these sales and use manufacturer's coupons. So basically they were getting more money back than they were paying. And even though it was technically right, it was harming our store. And so my manager didn't like that. My manager just told me to say that we were sold out of them so that the customer couldn't buy anymore. I kind of just did it because it was something small and my boss told me to.
It's a time when we ran out of like some really bold coffee and my manager was just like, just give them the light one. Like, they're not gonna know, coffee is coffee. I kind of felt bad because it wasn't what they wanted and wasn't what they were paying for. But I was like, okay, well, if the manager says yes, then here's the bold coffee.
Private emails sent by stock analysts during the dot-com boom often indicated that the analysts wished they had the courage to stand up to their superiors and call them like they saw them. But usually, these analysts failed to do so. Instead, they continued to knuckle under to supervisory pressure to hype questionable stocks so that their firms could gain investment banking business.
Okay.
Most of us simply do not realize how much our desire to please superiors and our consequent tendency to defer to authority will cloud our ethical judgment when the time comes to make decisions.
Okay.
If it's an authority figure like a boss that you really like or you really need to like you, that I have a tendency to commit to something without thinking about what else I have. So if a boss asks me to stay late, I may say, yes, of course I can, because I want to do this project right. I want to make sure you like it. It's ready when you want it to be, without thinking about previous engagements I've made to other people and disappointing other people in my life, or attending to my own needs, which can kind of conflict with what I actually need to do outside of my job.
A study of nurses by Hoffling and Brotzman found that when members of one group of nurses were asked whether they would follow a physician's instructions to give a patient an injection of an obviously excessive dose of a drug that was not even on the hospital's approved list, almost all the nurses said they would not do so. But when a second group of nurses were actually given such instructions, virtually every one of them was prepared to do so before they were stopped by the experimenters. More concerning than people consciously acting unethically in order to stay in their boss's good graces is the fact that sometimes employees are so intent upon pleasing their superiors that they do not even notice the ethical aspects of a decision.
Okay.
Eagle Bud Crow, who became infamous as head of the plumbers unit operating out of President Nixon's White House, was instructed to oversee a break-in at the office of the psychiatrist of Daniel Ellsberg, who had leaked the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times, embarrassing the Nixon administration. Crow later explained that he was so intent upon pleasing his superiors, who were, after all, among the most powerful people in the world, that he never even activated his own ethical sense to judge the morality of what he was trying to accomplish. He did not see the ethical dimensions of his situation until it was too late. Bud Crow's experience should be a warning to us all. While it is usually a fine thing for us to please our supervisors, we must keep a lookout for ethical issues, and we must never defer so completely to our bosses that we substitute their orders for our own ethical standards.
I'm homosexual, I'm gay. And my mom asked me when I was younger to like go and, I don't know, talk to my pastor about it and like basically to see what was wrong with me. After a while, I told her, you know, I personally am not okay with this because I'm not hurting anyone. You know, knowing they were gonna be angry about it instead of just lying about it, that was hard. But in the long run, I think it helped me out because it helped me be a prouder person. And it did help me come to the point to where it feels good to be truthful.
I think just listening to that inner voice is key.
The sort of environment that helped me be able to speak up is one where you're treated as an equal, at least on a personal level.
Remember that there's really big consequences to acting unethically sometimes, and just one time can destroy a program, can destroy a person, and like what they've worked for their entire life.
I think if you keep those ideas in mind, it'll be easier for you to say, that's not ethical, and I'm not gonna do that.